شیوا محبوبی، زندانی سیاسی سابق و سخنگوی کمیته مبارزه برای آزادی زندانیان سیاسی در ایران هستند. ایشون همچنین برنامه‌ساز و مجری برنامه تلویزیونی زندانیان سیاسی هستند که در مورد زندانیان سیاسی محروم از دارو و درمان سخنان خودشون رو برای ما یاد می‌کنند.
تشکر. منم سلام میکنم خدمت همه شما. سال نو رو بهتون تبریک میگم و با تشکر از سازمان دهندگان این برنامه و ارگانیزیشن سودویند که این امکان رو فراهم کرده. با اجازهتون من به انگلیسی صحبت میکنم چون که بعداً کسایی که میبینم بتونن اطلاعاتی در رابطه با زندانیان سیاسی رو به اصطلاح کسانی که غیر زبان فارسی حرف میزنن. Thank you so much for having me here, and thanks to basically the organizer of this event and for Sudwind, if I'm saying it right, for providing, I would say, the opportunity for political prisoners, because I believe by being here, I'm the voice of the political prisoners. Each of us basically sitting here with the voice of thousands of political prisoners who cannot have the opportunity to be here. You will see the pictures in the background. Basically, the music is just a heartbeat, really. And that's referred to the campaign called Don't Let Their Heartbeat Stop. And these are just a few examples of political prisoners who are deprived of medication. And so basically, you can see the faces and names and some of their illnesses. I don't really need to, all the speakers talked about different human rights abuse, and I don't need to talk about the countless list of human rights abuse in Iran and the crime which was committed by the regime against people in Iran. I think the human rights abuse by the Islamic regime is a well-known fact and has been acknowledged by UN and many other organizations. Nowadays, many people around the world basically know that, including yourself sitting here or later on watching this video, they know that what's going on in Iran, and they know that what unbearable situation the regime has imposed on people in Iran. Things like kidnapping, torture, imprisonment, execution, rape, and stoning are only a few examples of what the regime has done in the last 35 years. Since Hassan Rouhani came basically to the power, which is only really 8 months ago, more than 600 prisoners were executed. And the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon has recently criticized Hassan Rouhani for failing to improve human rights in Iran. But the point is, we at CFPPI, when I say CFPPI, is the organization that I'm representing, Campaign to Free Political Prisoners in Iran. I'll refer to it to CFPPI to keep it short. But the point is, we at CFPPI, and I believe many activists, they have constantly, we've been writing to the international community, to UN, including Ban Ki-moon and the European Union, and basically warning them about the human rights abuse in Iran, and that Rouhani is part of the establishment. Rouhani is part of the problem and cannot bring the solution, basically. And he will not make any changes in human rights. We have said it so many times. And will continue the regime's policy of arresting, torturing, and executing dissidents, and he has been doing since coming to the power. We have been urging the international community to take an action, but each time we were told to wait for Rouhani. He will do something. And unfortunately, this waiting cost too many lives, at least 600 people. Execution is only one aspect of the crime committed by the regime, and there are many other aspects. Some of the speakers mentioned the deprivation of political prisoners from medication, and I guess that's the focus of my speech today, because I believe even in Ahmad Shahid's reports, none of them, it hasn't been reflected as much. And it was just mentioned, but not as something that's going on systematically. Hundreds, at the moment, without exaggeration, hundreds of political prisoners subjected to a torture, what we call it silence execution, which is by being deprived of medication. So they let you die and they don't have to execute you. The condition of prisoners are really shocking, but unfortunately not so many people know about it. It was August 2012 when one of the prisoners from Rajai Shah called me, which we are usually in contact with prison, and he told me that his cellmate, Afshin Osanlu, wants us, the CFPPI, to publish his letter and send it to the international community. At that time, when I was listening to these prisoners and was writing down the basically letter from Afshin, I could never imagine, or maybe I did not want to imagine, that this would be the last letter we get from Afshin. For some of you who doesn't know who Afshin is, he was a jailed worker and a political prisoner who died on 21st of June 2013 in the notorious Rajai Shah prison in Iran. The regime said he suffered a heart attack in Rajai Shah and passed away. According to his family, he had no previous heart problem or any other serious illness. According to his cellmates, the prison guard took Afshin, whom complained about the pain in his chest, to the prison infirmary without any news about his condition until late night. His cellmates believed they did not even try to save his life. And I didn't see no medical problem in that 2 pages of letter that he sent to us. Afshin is not the first one who died of an illness and lack of medical attention. Several other prisoners have also died due to the lack of medical attention, including just a few of them, Mansour Radmeh, Mohsen Dokmechi, and Ali Reza Karami Khairabadi. There are just a few of them. In fact, if you notice, the regime in Iran has devised a new method of executing political prisoners, and that is by silently killing them away from the watchful eyes of the human rights organization. This is because every time, if you notice, if you follow the news, every time the regime has executed political prisoners, they face the international outcry. So they don't want to do that anymore, basically. But even though depriving prisoners from medical attention, it was always like that. When I was in prison in the age of 16 years old, I've been deprived of the most urgent medication just because I was a prisoner. But the difference is now that according to all the reports that we get from different prisons, from their families, basically this method has been used more widely, routinely, and systematically in the last 3 years. The killings are effectively achieved by deliberately withholding urgently needed medical attention, which is usually required for injuries sustained during extended course of torture or for pre-existing conditions such as diabetes, high blood pressure, or heart disease. The authority then simply report that the victim died of natural cause while serving time in prison. A recent example of that is, as I said, Afshin Osanlu, as I mentioned it previously. On rare occasion, where medical intervention is granted, I'm not going to go through detail of, we have lots of reports, but just for the sake of time, I'm just keeping it very summarized. The prisoner is subjected to humiliation, physical abuse, and torture in exchange for treatment. For example, Mr. Mohammad Reza Pourshajari, that his daughter talked here, jail brother who is suffering from severe heart condition, was told to do televised confession in the tent for heart surgery. Returning from hospital is another story. Political prisoners face even more abuse, which even makes their health condition worse than their original medical condition. This report also includes the extension of abuse that the family go under. Like, for example, several political prisoners, including Saleh Kohan, they actually said, we don't want any medication because as soon as we come back, we face more abuse. Since 2012, CFPPI has been campaigning to raise awareness of deprivation of political prisoners from medical attention by the regime. We have compiled various reports and lists and have forwarded them to the UN European Union, head of states, and human rights organization. And since then, we have put our focus on that, and we believe there is not much focus on that, and it's not been taken seriously, let me put it that way. There are lots of cases which some mentioned here. Some of the example, Zaniar and Lohman Moradi, you might know their name, Mohammad Reza Pourshajari, Reza Shahabi, Hossein Kazemini Burujari, Rasul Mazrae, Hossein Ronaqi, whose father actually from a few days ago started having sitting in front of every prison. Mehdi Alizadeh Fakhrabadi, who had something around 20 seizures when he was in prison, and he's disabled. In October 2013, Campaign to Free Political Prisoners in Iran, CFPPI, has initiated a campaign called Don't Let Their Heartbeat Stop, as you can see the pictures, to support those political prisoners in Iran who are deprived of medical, basically, attention. And the focus of the campaign, the aim of the campaign is to highlight the condition of these political prisoners, to expose regime's practice of silently killing these prisoners by depriving them from medical attention, and to put pressure on the regime to provide medical care, basically. I think the European Union, UN, all the representative international organizations, human rights organizations, must take action against the Islamic regime deliberate and systematic act of exterminating political prisoners. I would like to ask you who are listening to this speech, who may later on through YouTube or any other channel listen to this, I would like to ask you to prioritize this issue of the prevention of political prisoners. When you go back to your organization, please remember that there are hundreds of them, we just named a few here, that they are waiting for you actually, in a way that because they haven't, I think, been supported enough, they have gone on hunger strike. And I would like to ask you to see this scheme as a silent execution, as a torture that devised deliberately by the Islamic regime in Iran, and to put pressure on the regime to provide the prisoners with immediate and unconditional medical attention. And also, I would like you to demand the freedom of political prisoners. I'm talking about their medical situation, that none of them should be in prison at all. Thank you so much.